legacy sports media seems to be turning their backs on the Indiana Fever, minus Caitlin Clark, minus Sophie Cunningham. They're now sending a signal. They're starting to backpedal away when it comes to their power rankings. And, of course, we're headed down the stretch trying to make the playoffs right now. And that's saying a lot when you consider how they've acted over time about Caitlin Clark in particular. But it's very clear.
What happens when the media hypes a team nonstop, then abandons them the moment their star goes down? That's exactly what's happening with the Indiana Fever right now. Caitlin Clark is sidelined, Sophie Cunningham's out.
And look, none of this matters if Caitlin Clark can't come back for the playoffs. If she can't come back before the playoffs start to try to get this team, get acclimated. If she's still irritated, as far as the ankle injury, the groin injury, the left quad injury, the right quad injury, the partridge in a pear tree. I mean, come on. Back in the rhythm before the season is over. Look, and my point is, if this team can't make any noise once they get in, then what is the point of her coming back?
And suddenly ESPN, CBS, and The Athletic are sliding the Fever down their power rankings like they never believed in them in the first place. But here's the twist. Was all that early love for Indiana actually about the team or just Clark? Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video.
Let's get to this. This is interesting indeed because we got 3 different sports outlets and they're all backing away from the Fever. They are. Lord. All right. The Fever are now without Cunningham, Sydney Colson, Ari McDonald for the remainder of the season and still without a timetable for Caitlin Clark. Lord knows I am not the biggest fan of the legacy media at all, but it does tell you something when all 3 are like, yikes. At what point is all of it just too much?
Why are the same outlets that spent the entire summer hyping up the Indiana Fever suddenly acting like this team doesn't belong anywhere near the top? ESPN drops them, CBS slides them back, The Athletic joins in, and it's like everyone woke up on the same morning and decided the Fever aren't worth the shine anymore. That switch didn't come after a blowout loss either. It happened right after some of the most competitive stretches the team has played all season, which makes you question if the rankings are actually about performance at all. Think about it.
I mean, it's starting to see it everywhere now. Those injury concerns, along with going 2-4 in their last 6 games, have led many to have major questions about the Fever right now. With only 9 games left, it's fair to wonder if Clark will return at all this season for the Fever. Do you know how many places are now starting to put the addendum if she returns at all? Shit, that sucks. Well, look, that's 2-4, but one of those 2 was an overtime victory against the worst team in the league, and your shooting guard, Kelsey Mitchell, had to drop a career high.
One week, the storylines were about Indiana's grit, about how they kept finding ways to climb out of impossible deficits, about how their fight was refreshing for a young squad. Then without Caitlin Clark, without Sophie Cunningham, without Ari McDonald, and even without Grace Coulson, they dragged games into the 4th quarter against teams that should have buried them. And what does the coverage do? Instead of doubling down on the narrative of resilience, instead of rewarding the chemistry that's starting to show, the power rankings take a nosedive. You don't need to be inside the locker room to see how strange that is. Kelsey Mitchell just put up 38 points in one of those games. 38. She was getting buckets from everywhere, attacking the rim, hitting jumpers, and running the offense like she wanted to remind everyone this roster doesn't revolve around just one player. If Clark is the face of the franchise, Mitchell stepped in with a reminder. She's still the one who's been holding this team together for years. You'd think that kind of performance would be headline material. Instead, the takeaway from national media was, well, they can't win without Caitlin Clark. Now let's lay this out. Missing Clark is no doubt a blow. She's both the playmaker and the crowd magnet. Cunningham stretches defenses with her shooting, McDonald brings energy and speed, and Coulson provides depth on the perimeter. When all four of them are unavailable at the same time, you're not talking about one superstar sitting, you're talking about a rotation that loses several major weapons. Most teams would collapse under that weight. So when the Fever hang in games, even against playoff-level competition, it should raise eyebrows in a positive way. But that's not the narrative. The reports are framed like this is simply proof that Indiana is helpless without Clark. No mention of Cunningham's absence, no mention of McDonald being out, nothing about a short bench forcing players to play heavy minutes. It's narrow and weirdly dismissive, almost as if the only storyline worth investing in is the status of Caitlin Clark. And that's where you see the gap between reality and spin.
38 to beat the worst team in the league. That's not a good sign. And look, we don't talk about this enough, but Ari McDonald, the loss of Ari McDonald also really hurt this team. We don't know what the hell Stephanie White's going to do. We don't know if Chloe Bibby is going to finally be a regular part of the game. I swear to God, it really did. I mean, if we wasn't going to have Caitlin Clark, Ari McDonald being there was a big deal. Because we know Ari could get hot, she could hit a shot.
In reality, Indiana's injuries crippled depth and rotations across the board. In the coverage, it's a Clark-only conversation. Here's why that matters. There are 9 games left on the schedule, 9 chances to climb or fall in the standings. Normally, that's plenty of time to fight back, especially if your key players return. But the media is already writing them off as if the season hit a dead end. Look at the rankings side by side and you'll notice something subtle but important. They all seem to carry the same message. Whether from ESPN, CBS, or The Athletic, Indiana cannot compete without Clark, end of story. It's almost like there's a quiet consensus forming, and the fans see it too. The message isn't about strategy, about Mitchell's leadership, about Nalissa Smith showing flashes, or even how the defense steps up late in games. The message is that star power is the only thing that matters. The moment Clark goes down, the Fever vanish from conversations about potential playoff teams. And that proves something most people didn't want to admit. The hype wasn't about Indiana the franchise, it was about Caitlin Clark the phenomenon. What this flip-flop really exposes is bigger than the rankings chart. It tells us a lot about the way women's sports are covered. Instead of balance, instead of analyzing teams as complex groups of athletes with varying strengths and weaknesses, the spotlight gets locked on a single figure. That might bring viewership, but it reduces the rest of the roster to background noise. And this season is making that contrast impossible to ignore. Now the question becomes what that means for how the Fever and other WNBA teams will be talked about moving forward. The Fever aren't just losing games. They're losing the respect of the media the second Clark steps off the floor. That tells you the coverage was never about Indiana as a full roster. It was about one name attached to every headline. So here's the challenge. Next time you see a ranking or article that only mentions one player, ask yourself what's missing. Which performances didn't get talked about? Which players were ignored? And if Indiana fights through the injuries, makes a push, and sneaks into the playoffs, who's actually going to step up and admit they were wrong?